Ekonene. So kama kuna story imekuwa ikimake headlines hapa Kenya ni story na Ruto. Kuna vile the Daily Nation on Friday kumeandika revealed Ruto's 1.2 billion church at State House. Now, of course, vile story ilitokea, I remember like seeing one of these images that I found to be super powerful, and it was the image of kids learning in a makeshift class, and this makeshift class imetengenezwa tu ni miti tu, like ni miti zimesurround, alafu blackboard iko kwa floor, alafu yani just zile extreme poverty kabisa. And nikiangalia story ya Ruto, one of the things that I found to be super interesting was Ruto actually promised to build this church ile time alikuwa na campaign. I remember those days when Ruto could do nothing wrong. Nakumbukaga like a lot of us pretend that we don't remember those days. You remember when this guy could do nothing wrong, when he was like this guy who was chosen by God, and also like he went against the system and he stopped the dynasty, and he was the first president who was the son of a nobody. Remember that time when Wasekasi ilikuwa nasema no, Kibaki was the son of a nobody, Moi was the son of a nobody, Kenyatta was the son of a nobody. Jomo, it's only Uhuru Kenyatta who's been the son of a somebody to come to presidents, but that time watu wengi walikuwa wanataka kusikia. So during that time he actually promised that he was going to build a church, but now he builds this church, and I think one of the things that stood out was first the price. So ilikuwa imeandikwa the church is going to cost 1.2 billion shillings, and this caused an outrage because people are thinking of like how much can 1.2 billion built, especially in a place like Kenya. So Ruto mwenyewe akaamua kujitetea, and this is a card that he's been using for so many years that I actually don't blame him. I do not blame him. And why don't I blame him? I don't blame him because I feel like this card works every time. Every time that he uses it, it works. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. And which card is that? The church card. You know, that card, naogopa Mungu. Sayo natembea na red bottom shoes imejaa blood ya jenzi hapo chini, lakini naogopa Mungu. And people take that, and people so he decided to play the card. Wacha tumsikize.
Mimi ni mtu naamini Mungu, na I have no apologies to make kwa kujenga kanisa. I have no apology. Mnanielewa? Na hakuna mtu nitaomba msamaha kwa kujenga kanisa. Tutajenga kanisa ya Mungu. Shetani akasirike afanye ile anataka. Ni mnanielewa? Naambiwa ati hata kwa magazeti leo ati kuna mtu anasema ati mimi najenga kanisa hapa State House. Ni kweli mimi najenga kanisa hapa State House?
Yes, so hapo umetikia kisema ni kweli mimi najenga kanisa hapa State House, and this is what I'm saying that the story actually came out. Kuna msalibaki ameshare the fact that this is something he'd promised to do during hizo siku za kitambo. And of course kumekuwa na church ya State House, and I didn't even know about this church till ni cheki like the images being shared. The church itself is ni church ya mabati, but before tubongeje, wacha tuendelee kumsikiza.
Nini mnanielewa? Hapa State House nilikuja nikakuta kanisa ya mabati. Kanisa ya mabati inatoshana na State House hata kwa maoni yenu. So nasijengi na pesa ya serikali, mimi najenga na pesa yangu hapa.
So kile nataka kujua ni kama anajenga na pesa yake, is the actual church itself going to cost 1.2 billion? Because let's look at his salary. So his salary inakuwa around 1.4 million, and I think that's gross. And 1.4 million, if you to multiply that by what is it called, by 12 months, I think we'd get, is it 16.8 million? 16.8 million. For you to turn that into a billion, you would need at least how many years? Maybe 70 years? Yes, you'd need around 70 years. So I don't know how this is going to work. I actually don't know. And which are these businesses unafanya hapa nje? Because najua wengi wenyu ni businessmen. Mimi tu ndo sikuagi business persons, ndio. So niambieni jo, hizi ni biashara gani zile mnadu? Zinaletea do hivi? Because every place ile naangalia jo sio ni bizka hizo. So I think that's the reason why mimi niko hapa na shindo like alafu pia after kuona ile image ya chuo, one thing I have to ask myself like is what would Jesus do? Check your WWJD. What would Jesus do? Would Jesus build a church, or would Jesus build schools and children homes and such? Because don't forget, everywhere that two or more are gathered, he's there. Sindio? Yeah. So we don't need a physical building. As long as kuna more than two, he's there. That's the reason even wakati wa sekete, nasikiaga, Jesus, damn, okay, he's there, man. Damn.
Nitakuja kuwapeleka siku ingine tuende tuombe huko. So, nilikuta, mimi sijaanzisha kanisa State House, nilikuta kanisa ikiweko. Shida tu ilikuwa ya mabati. Sasa nimeamua nijenge kanisa inatoshana na State House. Na haitagharimu serikali ya Kenya peni moja. Nitajenga na pesa zangu kwa sababu kanisa ya Mungu ni mahali ambapo panatoshana na heshima.
So mahali pa Mungu ni mahali panatoshana na heshima. Na sasa tunataka kusema that if there is poverty, then hakuna heshima. So does that mean that God does not exist in Africa? Because everywhere I see poverty, and this is a problem that I've always had with religion. Because religion inakuwa very selective. Place tunafaa kuomba Mungu haifai kuwa na poverty, but place watu wa Mungu wana stay inaweza kuwa na poverty. So nashindwa like which is which, if because he's omnipresent. But this was not supposed to be me preaching to you. This was supposed to be me looking at the ridiculousness of his story. So before even tuangalia what Gachagua said, one of the things ile nilifind ikiwa super interesting ilikuwa kitu fulani ile umsa naitwa nani aliandika, naitwa Cyprian. And before that nicheki Cyprian, one of the things that I'd look at is how I look at it. If you are using your own personal money to build a church and you're being told this church is 1.2 billion shillings, the question I have to ask myself is, are you planning to exit? Ama, since there's an election in 2 years' time, do you know something we don't know? Like, it makes no sense. Because always going to build church so that the next person can use it. So there has to be something that you know that we don't know. And that's what I'd want to find out. But sasa, Cyprian Nyakundi alienda pa me break down his story in his own way. Mimi mnajuaga tu, one of the things that I love saying about Kenya is a secular state. And we might not love that because we want to lie to ourselves that we are these holy people and we live by these holy principles and what. But at the end of the day, Kenya is a secular state. And as a secular state, it means that there is no religion that's supposed to be imewekwa juu hizo zingine. So, a Hindu, a Christian, a Muslim, an atheist, anyone should all be treated equally, and we should all be thinking of like the sort of if the president changed and it was a different religion, what would happen? So one of the things that has already happened is kuna vile waswa shatokea wakabaki wamesema that I think ni Muslims wakabaki wameuliza why not also build a mosque at State House, and I think he might end up doing that, or he might end up appealing to some rich Muslims wabaki wamefanya hivyo. And all this time he's going to be using the God card. Unajua ile telling people like oh this is me, I'm doing this because I love God, blah blah blah. And we know that on Monday, just Monday tu saba tutaremindiwa that if that God is loved, then that God loves a blood sacrifice. But wacha tubaki tumecheki hivi. Ilikuwa ni Cyprian Nyakundi, why the church at State House was always mabati. Then I break down. Akasema, I think it's good that I also speak about this issue because what President Ruto is doing by building a permanent church at State House is not just a matter of faith, but a clear overstep into dangerous territory where public property is being altered for personal religious legacy, and that should concern every Kenyan regardless of their belief. Then ikaendelea, State House has always had a mabati church structure, and that was not by accident or because previous presidents lacked money or faith. It was a quite wise decision to keep the structure non-permanent so that in case a future president came from a different religion, they could easily remove it without controversy or constitutional drama. Then ikaendelea, when you build a permanent church on a public land, even if you claim you're using personal funds, it still amounts to repurposing state property for religious symbolism that does not represent the full Kenyan identity, and that crosses a line that was intentionally never crossed before. If tomorrow a Muslim president takes over, what will stop them from demolishing Ruto's permanent church and constructing a mosque in its place? And then what happens when another president from yet another faith wins? Will every new term come with a bulldozer and a blueprint for a new sacred structure? This is why previous administrations left the church as mabati and modest. It allowed room for spiritual practice without imposing permanent religious marks on the presidency or the land that belongs to the people, and that balance protected everyone, Christian or not, from exclusion or forced symbolism. Then akaendelea, there's a deeper message here, because when the president uses his position to plant permanent religious buildings inside national landmarks, he's not acting as a humble servant of the people. He's behaving like a ruler who believes the presidency is an extension of his personal beliefs and not a neutral office meant to serve all equally. Then akamalizia akisema, we must say this plainly and early. Kenya is a secular state. No amount of private money justifies altering the physical identity of State House into a shrine for one faith. Because once that door is open, it cannot be closed without conflict, resentment, and future power struggles over public spaces. Then picha ya Samoei kabaki imesetiwa hapo. So what do I know? I know that Samoei is always going to use this religious card. And I know that it appeals to our mothers. And for a very long time, it appealed even to you, most probably. And but it's time to move away from that. And history of Samoei, one of the interesting things about it is every time we think about him and we think about the church, there are people who think about the church in a good way, and there are people who think about the church in a bad way. And thinking about the church in a bad way, I don't mean kitu kama ile Alai alikuwa ameandika. Alai alikuwa ameandika, by the time Ruto leaves power, no Kenyan will want to trust a church leader. It will be the most corrupt and most hated institution. He handles religion wrongly. So this guy wrote this. And then of course he ended up with a land scandal. And the land scandal vile nilisemaga, na vile musemaga, kama uko na shida ya land, uko na shida kesi mbaya mbaya, na support William Ruto. All you need to do is just confirm to him that you support him. And then what's going to happen? Your land case will go, your corruption case will go. Uliza kina nani Waluke kuna kuagana hivi Paulo na Sila waliomba milango ya gereza ikafunguka. What about Waluke? Aliomba milango ya gereza. Hakuomba. Alisifu Ruto milango ya gereza ikafunguka. So now we have this situation where Msekama Alai, of course, he's going through the whole thing where he's fighting for a piece of land, which any Kenyan with half a brain, and Zabaki ameona that he does not own that piece of land. And in the process, what has he decided? He's decided that he's going to make sure that he keeps praising Ruto. So in the process, kisifu Ruto, vitu zinakuendea vizuri. So he'd even written like a whole post juu hii story. And alikuwa amejam sana na wasa wanazusha about the church itself. And nataka kwenda kwa hiyo post ya Alai. Alikuwa ametutukana, ametudismiss vile sisi ni wajinga. And the fact that ina coincide with hii kesi yake ya Runda, I find it to be super interesting kabisa. So ndio kitu Alai alikuwa ameandika, State House has always had a church, you fools. The last occupant was more focused on alcohol and gay orgies. Why do you hate President William Ruto for upgrading the State House Church without using public funds? Wacheni ethnic entitlement. So this is that narrative they've been pushing. They've been trying to push this narrative of the only people who are mad at the government are Kikuyus. And the narrative is not sticking, but they've been told to stick to it and just continue going with it. Don't forget William Ruto, as soon as we move away from tribal politics, then it will be very hard for the likes of akina Ruto to survive. Nacheki. So this is what. So Alai ended up sharing hizo ma State House churches and the way that they look. Of course zimekuwa ni State House churches za mabati, na vile umesikia imekuwa ni intentional so that there is no permanent structure, so that if the next person kujas anaweza baki ameendelea na religion yake. So tukitoka hapo wacha tuangalie Gachagua. So Gachagua of course decided to react to this story, but now he reacted by going back to a place that everyone avoids. Najua kuna kwa this one conversation that we all avoid, and with that in mind I'm also going to avoid this conversation. Konene, so kwa US unatry kutuma do Kenya, tumia Lemfi. Lemfi number 1 kupatiaga the best exchange rates. Alafu on your first $100 ilunatuma, unabaki umepata $20 cashback. Alafu ukitumia the referral code ikonene, si wenyewe pia tunapata $20. So end up umesupport ikonene, ndio tukue na better lighting. Cheki jo, saizi si unaona, unzaniona. The last time niliduia day Lemfi, ulikuwa unaniona hivi. Was I this clear? And this is because of the other people who supported vile litumia ile promo code ikonene ya Lemfi. So baki umechangamka, ingia Lemfi. Alafu saizi pia kitu poa, si lazima ubaki umeload wallet yako. Unaweza baki umeshikanisha debit card yako na Lemfi. So kituma do ni instant, ikienda kule inaenda. Alafu kama kawaida pia kuna zero transfer fees, $20 cashback, una support ikonene. Alafu pia vile musemaga jo, Lemfi, international payments for everyone. Ikonene. Sawa. Okay. So unaelewa? Okay. Acha tucheki. Especially saizi vile kuna hizi stories of abductions, buda jo siwezi. Yeah. Lakini acha tu tusikize. Hii ni Gachagua, hii mimi. Okay.
Ameniita mama mzee kama 70 years wa CWA, akaniambia nimesikia William Ruto anajenga kanisa pale. Sasa kama anapenda kujenga kanisa sana, si ile kanisa ilichomwa pale Kiambaa pamoja na watoto wajenge hiyo kwanza kabla kujenga hii State House? William Ruto, we are asking you. We don't have a problem if you like building churches. But since 2007, why don't you get a part of that 1.2 billion and go and rebuild the Kiambaa Church that was touched with our children inside? And then kutoka hapo tuweze kuendelea.
Yeah, so mecheki, so Alibaki may bring up this specific church. If you don't know why he brought up this church, Baki may grab your Google tab, type Apple 2007 Kiambaa Church, and then you'll see a few articles that might interest you and might make you understand why he said this. So kuna hii story, but mimi nikiangalia, of course it goes back to that image that I saw, the image of the extreme poverty that I saw. And I always look at religion as that, you know, it's a control tool, and apart from it being a control tool, it's one of those tools that justifies poverty. So you're told you're poor. You're not poor because politicians are not doing their job. You're poor because God is testing you. You're poor because God knows you're strong and you'll overcome. And sometimes you're like, I don't want to overcome. Nacheki, I'm tired, man. This reminds me, kuna post flani nilicheki on Twitter and end up repost, and I found it to be super funny. So the post was zile za I don't even fuck around, but I still find out. And that's life for most of us. We don't even fuck around, but we still find out. So why do we need to be tested like every day? It's just a test. And then for politicians, it's just a soft life. These people, nothing fails. Their businesses never fail. Everything that they do just makes profit, and it's Nini sisi hapa. Businesses close every day. Najua people become desperate. Unaona watu wanauza kila kitu because even at throwaway prices just to be able to at least survive. Why? Because business may fail. Hakuna, Kenyans don't have spending power. And so we have this situation whereby Ruto is building this church. Is it going to convince enough Kenyans to follow him? I don't think so. I think that whatever boat has sailed. Is it still going to convince our mothers? Yes. I think our mothers are, there's just something about religion that stays with them, that has them like in this confused state where they can't see beyond what they are told by politicians. But a few things will happen. BBC walienda wame report joy story, waliandika Kenyan leader to build huge church at presidential office. Then ikabaki imeandikwa hapo, ukiingia kwa nini ya BBC wameandika William Ruto is Kenya's first evangelical Christian president, cultivating a pious image and earning himself the nickname of Deputy Jesus. During his many years in public office, he's been known to quote scripture and cry in public, behavior that has long alienated some Kenyans. Ile time ICC kalikuwa kameshika, alikuwa analiaga sana, but I think after kuwa president, I think he cried like once, ndio. alafu after he cried like once akabaki ametulia. So I don't think that has ever happened again. Ikikam to stories za kulia, I think after kuwa president alibaki amelenga hiyo story because alicheki mengia box. Unajua nika ile time unaomba dem, unaweza kuwa umeomba dem juu amekataa. Watu walikuwa nasikizaga iko nini kitambo siku za kwanza washaisikia ile story nilikuwa napatiana. Ati nilikuwa na hii nipate wa story yocha. Kuna raya iko ina dem kwa keja. Afu imeomba dem amekataa kabisa. Halafu ikamwambia launch suruaru. Adua maana siame. So launch suruaru ni vua ngola. Nataka tu kuipoint tu. Hataki kuingia, alikuwa anataka kuipoint. Like saa shida ni naipoint hivi ama naipoint vile. Hapo ndio sijui. But launch suruaru adua maana siame. So Ruto ashatoka from party ya launch suruaru adua maana siame. Najua. And cause tulishaingia box. So hakuna story. Yeye mwenyewe pia kaingia box. Kwa ballot box. Okay. Niko na za ovyo najua. But sasa kuna ubuda anaitwa Jackson Olesapit alikuwa ameandika, when you have a church in State House, which kingdom does it represent? Putting a church in State House is a declaration that Christianity is the state religion against the constitution which defines Kenya as a secular state which embraces all religions. Will the president be the bishop or leader of this church as we've seen him recently lead public prayers? So kulikuwa nayo swali like because we don't have a state religion. I know we love lying to ourselves that we are a Christian country, but we are actually not a Christian country. We are a secular country. And kuna msee alibaki ameandika amequote the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Alafu kwa state and religion. Then imeandikwa vizuri kabisa, there shall be no state religion. Sindio? Alafu ikakuwa national symbols and national days shall be, so wampatia na hivyo. But the main thing niyo, there shall be no state religion. So Christianity is not the state religion of Kenya. Kenya is a secular state. And since Kenya is a secular state, we do not need a church at State House. Another thing, you are there for 2 years or God forbid 7 years. Why are you building a church? Like, take that money, do something else. Start the Sugoi hospital, the Kasongo hospital in Sugoi. We're trying to imagine the irony if there was Kasongo hospital and Kasongo hospital had state-of-the-art equipment, can detect diseases like cancer, kuna dialysis machines and all that. What would that do for you? Najua, tunaweza kuwa tu hapo. Wewe ni mgonjwa upendi Kasongo lakini unaenda Kasongo hospital. But of course that's not something that you'd want to do. So hii ndio kitu ina happen na hii mambo ya church. And yeah, but nikimalizia story ya church, I still have to stick with Ruto, and I'm sticking with Ruto with this. Kuna hii video moja niliona, ilikuwa video huu dem. I've never seen her speak anywhere, or at least I'm never interested in her speaking. Na dem na bonga juu yake ni huyu sijui anitangwa Toto. Toto, she was also like one of those people who are being praised kabisa when this government came in, because when this government came in, it was a very interesting time. Like I used to see Kenyans, and Kenyans would be so happy. Oh, William Ruto. If God is on your side, no one can be against you. They had the dynasty, but Ruto had God on his side. Nakumbuka hizo siku. So hizo siku, one of the people being praised ilikuwa Udem. Na Udem aliamua kubonga jua kitu moja. Ile acha tumsikize.
Hakuna mwanaume aende round mbili. Kila mwanaume lazima aende round. Kibaki alikuwa sinije wase. Arambe! Kibaki alikuja akaenda raundi. Uhuru akakuja akaenda raundi. Hata president wetu akaenda raundi. Na hata huyo mwenye anaongea hata kumaliza raundi moja. Alishuka mapema kwa gari.
So I don't know what to think about this, because kumekuwa na hii shida ile, especially we as men, like one of the part, at what point do we always feel mature? We always feel mature when we stop sexualizing women. So it's very sad for hapa Kenya that women really, especially female politicians, really sexualize themselves. inakuwaga like any opportunity they get to use a sexual analogy, they end up using it. So unacheki kama huyo hakuna mwanaume aendagi round mbili. Mnakumbuka Aisha Juma used to have that nonsense. So I guess who pia may pick up. But ikikam to story around mbili, first of all, I don't know how to take it. Should I take it literally? Yes. The older you get, round mbili inakuwaga ni struggle. Okay, inakuwaga ni struggle. And by the older, ukishafikisha ka 40 kwenda juu, na Ruto tayari uko over ka 50. So hapo round mbili ni shida. Alafu on top of that ni dem ndiye anafaa kukubali round ya pili. Dem akisema z, then it stops being round ya pili. It ends up being a crime. Ajua, it stop being pleasure. It ends up being a crime scene. And in this context, dem ni Kenyans. And these Kenyans are tired. That the reason why the religious card is not working is these Kenyans are tired. They just want change. They just want good governance. You can have all these noble ideas, but of all these noble ideas come at the price of blood, and they come at the price of violence. Then people don't want them. If you have to kill me to show me that you're the right person to lead the country, then you have to understand why I'm not convinced. So yes, but yeah, hakuna mtu enda around mili. So wacha tubaki tumecheki bila kutaenda. Alafu hii church ya State House, acha tungoje tuone. Nishachiki kuna wase kadhaa wale wamesema wanafaa kwenda kwa hii church, alafu wabaki wameioccupy. I want to know, ukienda church ya State House alafu mwanze kuimba Ruto must go, what would happen? Would you be tear gassed at State House? And if it's 8,000 of you, would you all be abducted? Like, what would happen? What's the situation with that? Like, if you have to start thinking about it, like, kikam to story. Tufikirie, 8,000 people. How's the security supposed to be handled up at State House? Like, try to understand that I don't understand. But as I always say, this is Kenya. We don't look for solutions within ourselves. We look for solutions from up there. And the problem is we've been looking for solutions from up there for so long that I guess that's the reason why Ruto has decided to build a church. Sindio? Eko nene.